make sure that if there is alternative language used, it is stronger language. In addition, there are, of course, every group has got their different particular interests they want to make sure stay in. So whether it's rural women or widows or whatever it happens to be. And then, of course, there are some people who've really tried hard to get particular language in. So you've got sexual reproductive health and rights, which is hard fought for language. So we're trying to keep that in. And there are the tricky paragraphs about nationality and sovereignty and so forth, which we're trying to reduce. There are also a few paragraphs which are the full lists. And as you know, the UN doesn't like lists because always somebody is going to be left out when you have a list. And then if there are lists, of course, we want to try to make sure that we get everybody in there. So you've got, we try to make sure that every woman in all of her diversity is represented in those lists. There's also some discussion about the language of all. So the agreed language for the priority theme is all women and girls. And there's some discussion about other kinds of descriptions. So all women and girls in all their diversity, for example, and various other kind of formulations of language. Some countries have been able to negotiate very closely with their states parties and have been able to have good relations with them. Denmark, Canada, the UK, we know, I'm sure you all have other examples from other European countries. I don't know what it's like this year with the states. Maybe you've been able to have good contacts with the states now on the text. I think that's a kind of a rough summary. Ula, is there anything else you'd like to share about the priority theme?
No, not so much, but the only thing I would really like to add is that I don't know if it's true, but I think the Danish government is really the only one that are allowing, every government, every state have 2 seats for negotiations, and they have really offered the 1 seat to us, the CSO people. So that is very kind. So we are a big Danish delegation that really want to be in that seat. So we are taking turns starting tonight. The negotiations is going on tonight and tomorrow and Thursday and Friday. And next week is organized on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. So it's going to be very interesting to be at that seat. And hopefully we will do our best, of course. But what I hear now is that they want compromises for the text and so on. And we don't like that in the delegation, but we have to work as hard as possible. And I really would like next time we have a meeting to come up with some good news. But at least we will start negotiations tonight. So let's see.
Thank you. We've heard that also the Netherlands has good contact with their government. Grow, you have
very good, but they're not at the table, but they're very good connection. Yes, that's true. Yeah.
And congratulations to you, Ula, for your position in the delegation and for the Danish for being so far ahead as always. Grow, you have your hand up.
Yes, just to include and actually say that Netherlands have a civil society person as part of the delegation, as one of the tricky part this year is that there's only 2 people allowed in digitally to the negotiations. So that blocks civil society for most countries, but the Netherlands have agreed to have someone from civil society. The EU has also said that they will have one that can come in due to the fact that Belgium usually has someone in. And as of yesterday, both Argentina and in Mexico, they were also trying to get somebody from civil society on the delegation, at least part of the time.
Yeah.
We've also tried from Norway, but we've been told that we can't since there's only 2 seats. And
okay.
I'm on the official delegation digitally.
Okay, that's great. Thank you ever so much. That's wonderful. So in terms of the other thing we wanted to cover really was, unless anybody's got any updates on the priority theme and the agreed conclusions as they are at the moment. Yes, Marianne, you've got your hand up.
Yes, Mary also wanted to speak.
Yes.
Okay, I just followed the issue of finances, as you might have seen, on behalf of International Alliance of Women. And there is improvement, but I also recommend all of you to strengthen the language with financing for gender equality by dropping more or lobbying for more language from the agreed conclusion of 52 in 2008, because at the financial crisis, we got agreed language, which is very strong on maybe gender responsive budget, but also investment, bold, use new language, bold, robust investment. And at best, at each measure, which is described as to the participation or to the ending violence against girls and women, the best thing would be, it will be all backed up by and appropriate funds or financing, etc., because it has no meaning if we have this lip service words. Everything must have a budget as backing it up. In some events, and I know that UN Women has taken it seriously as a source for language, the chair of the commission and others today in the meeting with the Secretary General of the United Nations and Fumlise from UN Women, I could also drop it in. So I hope you strengthen this, because as more we have financing for our measures, as better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So very briefly, going on to the review theme, as you know, there is the report, that the high-level report that's already taken place, the discussions. And at the moment, it just looks like there'll be the interactive dialogues and the high-level panels, and then a consensus from the information provided in those discussions is what will create the majority of the report that goes to ECOSOC. So at the moment, our opportunities to influence the statement or the report that goes on the review theme is very limited. But we can use our delegations and try to influence them in terms of what we want to have happen in the review theme. And it is something that we need to continue to look at, not just the priority theme, because there are sometimes very important things that occur in the review theme discussion. So maybe that's something that we can all bear in mind in terms of the review theme. This year, there isn't going to be the discussion on methods of work, or the working methods resolution, as it's sometimes called. That is going to be negotiated next year. But just something to maybe think about this year is to be looking at that and thinking about what kind of things we want to see different in CSW, because we need to start working with our delegations this year and through the year in preparation for the negotiations next year when the resolution will be discussed. So really, it's something for us to be thinking about for the future. The core group had thought that it would be a good idea to divide into into groups. When we're together face to face, we tend to divide up into little groups in the same room, and it's always very noisy. So it'll be a bit less noisy here. Still rather large groups, but at least it gives a bit more opportunity for us to kind of get to know each other or to share comments. So if you could possibly think about anything on the priority theme, anything on the review theme, anything on the working methods, and anything on what you'd like to see the core group do. Are there any actions that you'd like us as a caucus to take this CSW? If you can discuss those in your rooms, that would be really great. And everybody, there's no facilitator set up, so I'm sure we're all terribly capable women. I'm sure somebody in the group will be able to facilitate, and somebody in the group will be able to take notes. And so that we can come back, maybe just check what we thought would be a good timing, because we've only got an hour together. So yeah, if we come back at about in about 20 minutes, so you've got enough time to chat, but then enough time to just very quickly feedback from each room. Now, we're not going to be able to feedback everything you've said with each other, but if you can think of maybe one action or one insight or anything you'd like the caucus to do, and bring that to the feedback session, that'd be really great. So Devon, if you can divide us into rooms, and there's 150 of us. So I don't know how many rooms we can have, but can we do 15 rooms, or just do as many rooms as we can so that we have a smaller group as possible to discuss? Is that possible, Devon?
Sure, I can make the groups to be like 5 people per group.
Well, that would be really great. The only thing is that will take us a long time to feedback. But it does mean that you'll have a much better chance to chat. So what do you think? Would 10 people in a room be good? What do you reckon? Can I have some signs of, yeah, great. Okay, so Devon, if you have about 10 people in a room, maybe that would be good.
Okay.
Fantastic. So
All right.
very speedy feedback when we come back, everybody.
All right, and then we said 15 minutes.
That will take us to 5:30. Well, that's just how many rooms probably. So yeah, 15 minutes, please. Yeah.
All righty.
Thank you. See you all later, everybody. Enjoy.
Have men as allies, and the conversation to go towards all gender. And the insight was not to lose the notion of sex as class and the importance of statistics. Also, the importance of seeing that women do need to be decision makers and to be at the table. The women need to take the power back, and everything that COVID has unveiled, such as the unpaid labor, and the fact that now men have to deal with things that perhaps they weren't aware of because they were not in the house as much. And of course, women having to be out in the workplace and men having to take care of house chores. And,
thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
That's it.
Sorry, Nina. Thank you very much. And room 3. Room 3, anybody?
I'm not sure if we were room 3. I don't know what we could have been. Anyway, we had a discussion about the difference between having our virtual platform for CSW as compared to having meetings where you got a chance to get to know people and chat with people and have coffee and kind of share experiences. That was different. There were good things about it because it certainly opened it to a lot more people. Mm-hmm. And looking forward to maybe next year having a combination of both. We also talked about, because from Canada, and Daniela was the one that kind of brought this to everybody's attention, was including the statement about the Indigenous women and girls in the agreed conclusions. And we really appreciate the support from many of you in the caucus, and people were totally supportive of it, and will ensure that does proceed. Thank you.
Before, and the key issues that came up were the importance of visas, that we need to think about it post-COVID, torture by non-state actors, femicide, making sure that we prepare for the working methods resolution next year, that we invite special rapporteur on CSW, and making sure that there are the voices of grassroots women. And the call to thank for its work. So room 5? Anyone from room 5?
Yep, that was us. So we talked about the involvement of business into this space, and about the hesitancy and caution about them being involved. But then we also talked about the importance of fair pay and equal pay, and the implementation of the ILO 190 and 189 in relation to domestic workers and in relation to safety in the workplace. But we also talked about the importance of stakeholders and shareholder economy, and how we get businesses to buy in the private sector. We talked about lots of other issues, including the mission and the outreach to civil society, and gender-based violence and COVID impact. So that's a lot. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. Room 6. Anybody from room 6? Okay, maybe people.
No, so Paula's talking, but she's on mute.
Ah, okay.
I'm sorry. I think actually we were room 5, but maybe I should jump in now. Maybe I'm mistaken. Better if you're here, maybe you'd be better at this than I am. But we talked mainly about the marginalized groups being left out of the document, in particular widows, and also the problem of not using the words girls and women in the document.
Okay, great, thank you. The next room, so let's go to 7. Let's hopefully we've got everybody so far. Room 7?
I don't know if we were room 7, quite honestly, but I'll just
go for it, yeah.
Kind of go. All right. So a lot of what we talked about were specific concerns about people being left out, especially people who didn't have knowledge or availability to different kinds of technology and digital platforms, instead of being able to kind of come, you know, here normally to CSW. Also, we talked about the concern of civil society being kind of left out during kind of the whole process through the negotiations and everything, and how focusing on that inclusion would definitely be something that should be of importance.
Thank you very much. Next room, I've got it down as 8, but who knows? Anybody else? Another room? Who hasn't spoken yet? Whose room hasn't spoken yet?
So we were from room 11.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yes, we talked about a lot about CEDAW. There was strong sentiments coming on ratification of CEDAW. We also talked about building back better, and there were concerns raised about women in politics as having like 25% of women in politics and like 75% of men. So it was so much raised as well from France that we need more of the girls in leadership. So we, that is another issue that was raised, and the issue of bodily autonomous and the issue of language being like the word girl being left out of the conclusion, so they want it back in the conclusions. Yeah, and also the issue of socioeconomic equality, and also equal representation even at local bodies, at local levels.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, so the next room, 12 then?
No, actually it's room 9, we skipped.
Yeah, well, I skipped 8 and 9 and 10 because nobody came forward for that. So anybody from 8 or 9 or 10?
So we were room 9.
Okay, go for it, Daniela.
It has been addressed, what is it that some of the members feel that the caucus should do and what should we focus on? Susan Lee, United States, she has addressed the issue of being a little bit confused with respect to engagement of NGOs and working relationship with their government. They don't feel like their voices are being heard. And she asked how to build up relationships with the governments because they don't feel informed. They don't know to whom to address those issues and where to go. The next issue is civil society space. The shrinking space of civil society addressed also by Susan. And she doesn't know to whom to reach in this respect. She's aware of the US caucus of women, but she really doesn't know where to reach out, and that we should be included into the negotiation processes. And the other issue is the engagement of youth with the caucus, addressed by Maureen. And that's it, we are done.
Thank you very much. Room 10, anybody
recognize? I can speak for group 10.
Please.
Thank you to everyone in my group. We covered a lot of ground on different issues. We started picking up where we left off in the chat. There was an ask for a need for clarity around CSW 52 language on budget and finance. And I have numbers 19.3 and 22 in my notes. Someone noticed in the revisions on the ILO conventions on workplace that it didn't mention ILO 190 and that this should be added. We also briefly discussed the need for inclusion of Indigenous women and widows, and we moved on to discuss violence against women and girls. And there was some upset about discussion around violence as only violence in the workplace and the need for that to be broadened and include all kinds of violence against women and girls. We also discussed the need to better include and address food security and the reality that the people most impacted by that issue are often single moms with kids or young families, and the need for women to be able to ensure their families are fed and healthy in order for women to pursue other parts of their lives, and childcare is also a big part of that, the need for access to childcare in order for women to pursue their goals and their own dreams. So we talked about, in order for women to be able to access positions of leadership and to achieve equity in the workplace, those underlying issues need to be addressed as well. So those were sort of the intersections of the issues we spoke about. Someone also mentioned that programs on education and the sustainable development goals are on hold due to the pandemic, and there's a bit of a limited capacity to pursue some of their work. If I missed anything to our group, please add it in the chat. Thanks, everyone.
That's great. Thank you very much. Room 12. Room 12.
Yes, Marian, that's us.
Yes, it was a very lovely discussion, but too less time, like always. We wish that the caucus will link up with the other caucuses for a linkage caucus. Also, in the time before next year, in preparing very strongly for climate change, that we invite more ministers to our caucus and have speeches and time to negotiate in before or influence ministers on this issue or other issues. And our main, from mainly all of us or several times supported issue was climate change. It is too less in the document now. I think we should take action now to get more on climate change in and prepare it as the priority issue of next year. Then ILO has suggested to have a decade or remaining 9 years of a priority issue always on violence against women, ending violence against women. And because it is such a non-progress status that we thought that a decade kind of helps us to get progress done. And then one can have sub issues, all the other issues. And it was mentioned as well that girls must be in the document now. We should lobby for this, that it's not going lost because some forces try to cancel girls. And also the language of women and girls. We had some issues which are under violence against women, especially the forms ending prostitution, ending child marriage, and other forms of violence against women were mentioned. There should be kind of sensibility in this document for. And then it was said that, the caucus should also be in Mexico and Paris. I think these were mainly our issues. Otherwise, if I forgot something, you can mention now.
Thank you very much.
No, it was fine. Thank you.
Thank you. What about room 13?
Room 13, we spoke about two major issues, agenda for the caucus and greater access for NGOs. For the agenda for the caucus, the UN Association of San Francisco has announced a new agenda for US human rights, focused on US ratification of CEDAW finally, and the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So we would love to get support from this caucus for those very ambitious goals in 2 years. Secondly, other flagged issues were nuclear disarmament and women's needs during COVID. We spent a great deal of time on greater access for NGOs. Number one, access to negotiations over the agreed upon conclusions, better access. Number two, sharing of language around key issues and between document versions. Number 3, greater inclusion of the NGO committees in Geneva and Vienna in planning for the CSW. And number 4, how to use learnings from working remotely to extend civil society space for the CSW. And I'd be happy to send my notes along if somebody could send me an email address that we can send our notes to.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great idea. We're just, reflecting on what we can do about collating everything, but maybe we can cover that at the end when we've heard from everybody. Room 14, I think we have 15 rooms, so room 14.
I think that's us. I think that's me, us. So we really focused on the agreed conclusions. We're very concerned of hearing that they're being watered down. We saw that there was the first set of conclusions in February, which generally speaking, were bland, but relatively okay. But we're very worried about the second set of the draft and the watering down. And we need to understand a little bit more where the sticking points are. And we believe then that the caucus really needs to strategize once we really have all picked up what those difficulties are. There's can be no going back and no watering down. And then we discussed, some of us in the group, that's the first time that they have participated in the CSW, online, challenging, etc. But that we all have a voice and that we all need to be connecting with our political leaders and our delegations. And we need to really hone, bring our messages very strongly into that focus. So we would see the role of the caucus of actually gathering our intelligence around the agreed conclusions. It's very quick. We only have 1 more week to go. And we need to really have conclusions that are going to be really meaningful and that we can bring back to all our constituency wherever we are. So that was the main, anybody else in the group can intervene. Thank you.
That's great, thank you very much. I think then the last room was room 15 then. Was there a room 15? Or we done all the rooms? Is anybody in a room who hasn't had a chance to speak? Okay, so you can see in the chat, Lucy's put in the caucus email. So basically any notes you've taken from your discussions, if you can pass them to that email, what we can do is we can try to have a look at them and see what are the things that came up. There are obviously some things that came up quite a lot in terms of the language that we seem to have agreement on, things like stuff on climate change, girls, all women, etc. There's various things that came up, but I think it'd be really good if we could try to compile a list, and then maybe we can share that, and then everybody will be at liberty to work in their delegations to try to get those ideas across. And maybe when we come back to our meeting next week, we can again look at those things when you've seen them and see what action we can take, unless you have particular actions that you'd like to send to us in the email or put on the listserv that we can think about during CSW. So one suggestion was a linkage caucus. I'm not sure if we can get that organized in time, but it's something we can maybe try to raise. And anyway, that's as far as I can see. Unless anybody else has got any other suggestions about how we can kind of move forward from all the ideas that have happened so far, that have been put forward so far. Are you okay with that? So use the listserv and email our email to send us the list. We'll try to collate them and then share them on the listserv. Is there anything else that you think? Yes, please, Marion.
At the beginning, on the preparations for CSW, it was a bit difficult to tell our new members from International Alliance of Women to register or to subscribe to our caucus. And I sent you an email, and I don't know, can this maybe be improved in the latest text under each message, that how to subscribe, because there's only how to unsubscribe also.
Right, okay. Yes, I think the thing is that if anybody wants to subscribe, use that email that Lucy's put in the chat.
Okay, but sometimes they didn't feel included or so. So I don't know, to make it more visible how it functions.
Yeah, we are kind of limited with technology in that, have to remember that this core group is unpaid and there's no budget. So whatever happens, happens because the 7 of us managed to fit it in with all the other non-paid work that we're doing. This is just another voluntary job that we do. So I'm afraid you have to be patient with us and we do what we can. But also, there were problems with Google at a particular time. And we tried to get new names put on the list, and it took us some months to do that. But the listserv is quite large, and we do add on names as soon as we get them. Sometimes it takes time for people to receive information, and sometimes it goes into their spam. And sometimes people give us the wrong email. So we do the best in these circumstances. So please stay with us and just send us again the email, any names you want added to the list, just please send to that email address and we'll do our best to get it on the list. Annette, you had a question. What was your question? I mean, is anybody, I can't pick up all questions in the chat.
Yes, we were talking about the linkage caucus. Somebody actually asked just now, what is it? And I've given a very brief description, but I also said we have had linkage caucuses in the past, and if we haven't now, I'm just wondering why that stopped and whether we could learn from that. What was the problem with the linkage caucus that it stopped happening?
It's because the linkage caucus used to link themes, geographical caucuses, and once we stopped having themed caucuses, when there was just the priority and the review theme, when that happened, when we changed, when there was the first change in the working methods document, and we changed the subject and the idea of the priority and review theme, which came up, I don't know how many years ago, it was 10 years ago, whenever it was, that's when things changed. So that linkage caucus under Charlotte Bunch was about themes and bringing together the themes, not the geographical caucuses, but there's no reason why we can't again have something as a as a caucus for the
Zarine, there was also a linkage caucus that was about geography.
Was it?
Oh yeah, but obviously you didn't just sit there and talk about geography, you talked about the theme with the different opinions coming from the different caucuses, which meant that you sometimes ended up with a better advocacy on the text if you had all the areas of the world having to discuss, making it sound very grand, because usually everything's in a great rush and half the people can't turn up, but where you do get a chance to bring the different areas of the world together.
Thank you very much. Well, we'll certainly take that on board and try to do something about that. Maybe we can work with the committees from Geneva and Vienna as well, who are here, and try to do something about that. Catherine, you've got
I was just going to say, in my memory, the linkage caucuses and the others stopped because we used to meet in the UN building in the evening. They didn't have any other meetings in the evening. When they remodeled the UN building and everything was closed, it never came back.
Well, I guess now we're virtual. We don't have that same problem.
Zarine, may I speak? I'm not.
Yeah, but Monique also has a hand up, so maybe Monique first and then Marion. Monique, please. Monique? Monique, you had your hand up. Are you trying to speak? Are you unmuted?
I forgot to mute it. I'm coming from Paris, but since I'm coming at the CSW since 1994, really the caucus, the linkage of the caucus is missing, because as I said in the room number 6, we were all sitting on the floor, but all talking together, a lot of people together, and it was a good idea. This is missing, I think, this year. We really feel a little alone when we are in our room. Even if we give an idea, it's not the same than when we are all together in room A, B, or C and talking together. So this should come back. We should have it again, what I mean.
Thank you very much. Marion.
Yes, I think in International Alliance of Women, we can check back with our other members who are maybe in other caucuses. And I think we shouldn't question why it stopped. It has I think never stopped. It was so powerful to link up with all the other women. I mean, this is necessary. And I think we can manage to at least to next week or maybe end of the week have a meeting, one caucus for all. And we try all to connect to everybody, okay?
Okay, thank you, Marion. Okay, Shahla, please.
Yes, adding to the linkage caucuses, what used to happen is at the end of the day, we would have our meeting, and the caucuses were not just regional, they were also theme-based. So they could be on violence against women or education and so on. So we actually dove into our area of interest and our mission, and to bring that back to share with other women to pool resources and efforts. So we could probably have one very easily on this virtual platform.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's something that we can try to take forward. Mary Rose has a hand up. I think Mary Rose wanted to share something about the visa issue. We have 3 minutes left. So sorry, Mary Rose, please go ahead.
I'm going to send out to the caucus list my communications with the U.S. mission representative about the visa issue that we still need to follow up on that happened at CSW 63, because going forward, once the UN opens up after COVID, we still have to get that visa issue resolved with the US State Department. And also I wanted to remind everyone that don't forget that the United Nations governments have also sectored themselves into regional caucuses. So maybe we need to figure out how, as women, even though we meet on themes, to make sure the regional caucuses meet with those representatives of the government caucuses. Thank you so much, and appreciate
Thank you very much. So this area of making sure that we use the strength of the geographical caucus to link with the regional caucuses and maybe think about how they align with the other alliances that come up. So we know at the moment there's an alliance between Russia, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Iraq, and so forth, that is pushing back, especially on the WPS language. So maybe what we need to do is we need to look at those caucuses that are taking place in the negotiation room and find where our allies are together, and again, work in those groupings. So that's an interesting thing. Last comment, I think, Lucy.
Yes, I wanted to just point out, someone asked in the chat when the next events are going to be. For the North American and European caucus, we have a child marriages and widows' rights event coming on the 19th at 11:30 a.m. That's on Friday. And also for the USA caucus, we do have a feminist foreign policy event that's happening tomorrow. We send the email, but we are going to send the reminder again today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And also our next caucus meeting is next week. I think it's the 24th. It's a nice time for America. I think it's 5 to 6, and it's much later for Europe. So we're staying up late to see you all. And we also have a meeting that's organized by the COOL group on the 21st of March, which is about gender identity. And we have our strategy meeting on the last Friday. So we have those caucus meetings already. And also there is a joint caucus meeting between the caucus and Seroptimus on FGM, which is also, I think it's next Tuesday. So if you go on the portal and have a look, you'll find all those meetings. You won't find the one about the gender identity because that was the one I sent round in a document via the listserv. And on that note, I'm afraid we've reached our time, so we have to close. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Thank you very much for your discussions. I hope you all enjoyed them. And thank you very much for your very speedy feedback. Brilliant ideas from all of you. Thank you so much. What a grand and wonderful group. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.